All right, I'm Mark Hafner. I live in South County, St. Louis. I'm the other senator. I have 9 children, 6 sons and 3 daughters. I have 7 grandchildren. And when I found out that through birth certificates and Social Security cards that I had unknowingly made corporate slaves out of my children, I was a really unhappy person. Okay. We showed the signature line on the checks, and that is called microprinting. And now, if I started a corporation, and I knew that I had started a corporation, I would open a corporate checking account for that corporation where I would be the president of, and it would make some sense for the signature line to say authorized signature, because the corporation I would start wouldn't have a hand and couldn't sign anything. It would take a flesh and blood human being, the person who had started the corporation. But on a personal check, it doesn't make any sense, because on a personal check, it's a personal check. But the truth is it's an all caps name. The checking account that you have is an all caps name. Look at your driver's license. It's an all caps name. Voter registration, credit cards, everything that you do is in all caps. They have created a corporation out of you, and on the checks, in order for it to be valid, the authorized signature of that corporate account needs to sign it. What do you know about fine print? When they put fine print on a document, the finer the print, the more important it is to them, and the more they don't want you asking any questions about. I have run into almost nobody that knew that that signature was on there unless they were part of some type of a patriot movement. And it's hidden in plain sight because it has MP right behind it, which stands for microprinting. But nobody seems to catch this because it's hidden in plain sight. So the corporate identity thing is basically like me sneaking into your room when you're a baby, or sneaking in with your mother at the hospital when you were born, and basically stealing your identity and creating a corporation that you're actually the owner of, okay, but you don't even know that it exists. And then the initial public offering of that corporate entity is offered through a birth certificate bond. You can get as many copies, certified copies of your birth certificate as you want, but you can't get the original.
Why can't you?
The reason you can't get the original is because it was sold on the Securities Exchange as an initial public offering. I was born in the mid-50s, and the initial public offering of my birth certificate bond was sold on the Securities Exchange for about $600,000 in 1955. I have a 2-year-old. The initial public offering of a 2-year-old these days is about $2 million. It really is identity theft. All of these original security bonds, okay, that accrue value as they're used in commerce, and the value of the bonds go up, are actually held in each of the Federal Reserves all around the country. Now, a bond yields its profit to the person who is in possession of it when it matures. Guess when your birth certificate bond matures? When you die. And when you die, the person who, or the corporation that's holding the bond, will keep all the profit that that bond has generated. At my age, with the amount of commerce that I've done and the business that I have run, it's an estimate that I've probably got between $5 and $10 million is the actual value of my current bond. But because I'm not in possession of it, and I'm not even supposed to know that it exists, all those assets based on my identity have done me no good whatsoever. So how did we get into this mess? When we were being formed as colonies, it took a lot of money to get all the supplies and ships and everything over here to form the 13 colonies. British bankers and the British Crown put up a lot of dough. Well, they were happy to put up the dough because as long as they owned the colonies, they knew that the resources of this over here would pay them back a very good return on their investment. But when we broke away from them, now they had no return on their investment, and they had a legitimate claim of debt against us. If we weren't going to be theirs anymore, we needed to repay them for what they had invested to get the colony started. It was a legitimate debt that we owed when we were formed. There are sentences in the Constitution that read that the debts under the Confederacy are continued under this Constitution. So the Constitution is also an agreement of debt to the British and to the French, because we asked the French to help us defeat the British, and they wanted to be paid back for their military expenditures. So we basically were broke when we became a country, and what we didn't know, or I didn't know, is that the bank note when other countries loan to a country is a 70-year note. So the 70-year note comes due when Lincoln is president. They don't have the money under Lincoln to pay off the note. So Lincoln doesn't want to give the public lands of the 13 colonies and the public lands of the Louisiana Purchase back to the Europeans in a foreclosure. He'd rather have that not happen on his watch. So he says to the European bankers, can we renegotiate the loan? And they said, well, we might do that, but we're going to want some upfront money, we're going to want better terms, and we're going to want more collateral. Under Lincoln, there were now 34 republics, many of which were not, part of the original 13, weren't part of the Louisiana Purchase. And he went to them because what the European bankers wanted was they wanted the public lands of all 34 republics to be held as collateral against the new national debt for the next 70 years. Well, when the southern states heard that they were being asked to do this in a war that they hadn't fought in for collateral to bankers, and they didn't like the terms, they basically said they're not going to do it, and they seceded. The real reason for the Civil War and the secession of the states was over the collateralizing of the public lands of those republics. Slavery might have been an issue and various other things. State rights was involved in it, but it was really over the collateralizing of the public lands, and they weren't going to do it. Now Lincoln has a problem. He no longer has a quorum to convene Congress. He can't renegotiate the loan because he has no power to pass any laws. So he had an idea. And I think it was the best idea he could come up with because he was in a pretty bad spot. He started a corporation, the Act of 1871, which basically gave him the ability to form an all uppercase United States of America corporation with a physical jurisdiction of the District of Columbia, which was where they had the authority to do business, and he reconvened Congress as a corporation. As a reconvened corporation, he was able to renegotiate the debt, fight the war, and get the southern states to sign under duress, because some of the governors, even after the war, with threat of military action against the state capitals, had their governors forcibly replaced. Once that was done and all the collateral was in for the European bankers, I think Lincoln probably intended to shut the corporation back down, is my guess. But he was killed before he could do it, because they realized that this was a sweet opportunity to get around the Constitution. All right, so 70 years go by, and now we're up to the time of the Great Depression. We're up to the time when the rich elite go to Jekyll Island and they look for a way to permanently get a central bank into the American economy. If you have a central bank, the bankers who control the currency make a fortune off of the resources of the people. There had been several failed attempts at having a permanent central bank in the American history, and they'd always been rooted out and defeated after a short period of time. So this time they wanted to make it a little bit more permanent. So I think in 1912 they agreed that they'd fire it up 20 years later, which would have been 1932. They also understood that if they were going to pull this thing off, what had defeated it in the past was people's knowledge of it being unconstitutional. So they somehow were going to have to control the people. So the same people that put together the concept of Federal Reserve Bank also looked at how many newspapers they would have to buy to control the minds and the knowledge of the people. They determined that they needed to buy 21 newspapers and change the editors into their editors, who would only print things in those newspapers that would cover up what was really being done to the people. So they have controlled. So we have not had a free press in the United States, going all the way back to when newspapers really was the press, all the way back to about 1912. These same people, when radio kicked in, bought the radio stations. The same people have bought the television stations and the satellite and the cable stations. The knowledge that we are sharing here today has been spread abroad to at least 30 million Americans because of the internet. They haven't been able to control the internet like they have the newspapers, the television, and the radio since 1912. So the ability for us to go all around the state and all around the country and find people that are aware of these deceptions is because of the internet. So the internet is bringing down the corporation. Now, so in 1929 they crashed the economy. 28 they redistribute the wealth back. They take away the gold by making us enemy combatants, and they give us worthless Federal Reserve notes for our gold, made it illegal to own gold, bullion. They wanted additional collateral for the next 70-year term. They already had all the public lands. What do they want this time? They want the private lands. So they never put it to a vote to the American people that, hey, we don't want to be foreclosed on. So would you all mind having your private lands, houses, and farms put up as collateral against the national debt so we can spend foolishly for another 70 years and make ourselves rich as politicians at the expense and the risk of your private property? They never asked us that. They just did it. Okay? So by 1933, they had collateralized our sweat equity through birth certificates and made commercial entities out of us and stolen our identity. They had also put our private property up for collateral against the European debt. Some very, very brave people from 33 to 38 took the government to court for fraud, for doing these things. These court cases went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that what the corporation had done to the American people was fraud. It was fraud for two basic reasons. There wasn't full disclosure. If I can prove that your grandpa made a deal with my grandpa and that he didn't fully disclose the terms, there is no statute of limitations on fraud. Also, it was fraudulent because there wasn't consideration 2 days. Will you wash my car every day and wax it once a week, and in exchange for that I will give you nothing? Contract? No contract. There's no consideration going both ways. If I say I'll give you a penny a week and you agree to it, now we have a binding contract. It's a really sweet deal for me, but it's still consideration both ways. So the Supreme Court told the government that they had put our private lands at risk if they defaulted on the loan, and that there had not been full disclosure, and there was no consideration to us for using our identities to be the backing of all the money and to put up our private property for collateral against others, that we had been given nothing in exchange for all that risk. So there had to be full disclosure, and they had to give some consideration. I'm sure they ran an ad in the legal newspaper somewhere, so now we've got the disclosure out of the way, okay? And they said to the Supreme Court, if any of the American people submit any debt to the Treasury, not purchases, but debt, we will pay their debt out of the large sums of money that we are holding in their birth certificate bond. And that was okay with the Supreme Court. Now, they don't honor that, and they don't advertise that. Their own Supreme Court has said that we should have the ability, because of what they have done to us, that our consideration is you should be able to take your mortgage, your car payment, submit it to the Treasury, and it's paid out of your birth certificate bond. Because whatever debts you could ever rack up, it's a drop in the bucket to the amount of money that they have made off of your identity since your birth. If they solved all my financial problems, it wouldn't be 1% of what they have made off of me, and they're going to keep the rest when I die. Like they kept all the rest of my mother and my grandfather. So, that's why on the checks there's authorized signature, because we as sovereign human beings are a higher life form than a corporation. In order for them to control us, they had to have parity. So they, through birth certificates, driver's licenses, license plates, marriage licenses, Social Security cards, voter registration, titles for your cars, titles for your land. You get a deed of trust, which says right of tenancy and right of assignment. Tenant's where we get the word tenant from, tenancy. The personal property tax is us paying the owners of the property for us being tenants. Isn't that a wonderful concept? Now, so all of this has happened to us, and the Patriot movement has been fragmented and been around for maybe 20 years, and they've tried to use commercial law, they've tried to use maritime law, they've tried to use common law to get some remedy, to get some constitutional rights back to the people in opposition of what the corporation has done. The corporation exists at the federal, the state, and the county levels. It's throughout. It's all corporate. The judicial system all have ITN numbers. It is a corporation court system. The court system upholds the contract of the corporation against your corporate identity. It's really a sweet deal for them. So, the Patriot movement really never was able to get much remedy because the courts are rigged against the truth being they don't honor their own laws. So, about 2 years ago, we don't know whether the Patriot movement approached the military or the military approached the Patriot movement, but somehow this kind of conversation took place. Maybe it went something like this. Hey, military, you know you're serving a corporation and they're not treating the people under the Constitution and they got you doing things that aren't constitutional? And the military said, yeah, we know. But you, the people, advocated the republic. And we, the military, are not going to start a coup. Okay? So, yeah, we know. We don't have anybody else to serve. Then maybe the military said, but you know what? Maybe if the republic got re-inhabited, we'd eventually salute them as the true commander-in-chief. So a plan was put together, and it all hinged on the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment is the amendment that talks about grand juries. We have all been completely delusionally tricked into believing that grand juries are formed when a judge, a paid judge or a paid prosecutor, pulls a pool of people together, gives them instructions, filters what they can witness, tells them what the president is, and tells them what they're obligated to do. And grand juries are only formed at the behest of the judge or the prosecutor. Excuse me. But under the Fifth Amendment, We are all prosecutors. Under the Fifth Amendment, anytime you get 27 of us together, or according to the rules of your republic, you can bring 2 witnesses, bring a presentment against any public official, and that person must now go under trial. It's called a true bill. The power of the Fifth Amendment was discovered, rediscovered, by various patriot movements that came together and pulled their following so that we could get a grand jury in all 50 republics at one time to hear the same case. And the case that they came up with was that the governors are guilty of being elected by the people, but treating the people as corporate entities, working for a corporation, and not obeying the state constitution and the Constitution of the Republic. And the finding of these grand juries was that they had 7 days to resign or lose their option to hold office. And after 7 days, the lieutenant governor had 7 days. And after 7 days, the third person in line had the option. So within 21 days, if nobody repented, resigned, and retook the oath to the Constitution of the state and the Republic to do the right thing, within 21 days they had acquiesced. Acquiescence means that you have a certain period of time in order to do the honorable thing, to fulfill your obligations and make remedy. And if you acquiesce, then under common law, the dishonored party now has the option of coming up with their own remedy. So after a month or 2 had gone by and none of the governors had done the right thing, and they had all acquiesced, the 50 grand juries came together again, and according to the truth and the power of the Declaration of Independence, provided the remedy of, if they're not going to inhabit the offices of the Republic that had been abandoned since 71, they were not dissolved. They were just sitting dormant. That we would come together and re-inhabit them. And all 50 grand juries unanimously voted to put together a provisional government, just like the Founding Fathers did, elect provisional president, vice president, congressmen, senators, governors, judges, and put the whole thing back together lawfully, peacefully, constitutionally. And they did this, and that's been months ago. That Congress has met as a Continental Congress in Utah. They've put together documents that have been delivered to The Hague. There's over 80 to 90 nations that are dealing with this restored republic as the continuation of the original government of the Founding Fathers. They understand that the corporation is just a corporation and has not treated them too kindly with their Federal Reserve notes and all their military might. We are in the process right now as a republic of putting together compacts which are more powerful than just treaties with between 20 and 30 of these 80 nations for peace. Okay? Now, we are at the place now where we've got about 45 of the 50 republics hanging together to pass muster for the military and for the international community to say they've really got their act together and they are going to be able to run the entire country. Originally, the concept 2 years ago was that this republic would peacefully coexist alongside the corporation and have the rights of the republic that we are, just like the Lakota Indians have IDs. If I'm driving my truck down the road before I was in the Republic and my mud flap was torn and my taillight was out, the DOT could have given me hundreds of dollars worth of tickets. If they pull over a Lakota Indian with Lakota ID, they say, have a nice day. He's not in their jurisdiction. They're their own nation. They have their own laws, their own enforcement, their own everything. Okay? If a Lakota Indian gets messed with by some podunk, he doesn't fight the battle with the podunk. The nation fights it. And they win because they're internationally recognized. That has been established for us and is being finalized. we thought as a republic you could join us, get your IDs, and peacefully coexist, get rid of your debt, get rid of the IRS, get rid of property taxes, okay, get out of the need for contracts for driver's licenses and marriage licenses, and get back to constitutional freedom. Problem, okay, the corporation has run itself broke. It's at high risk of collapsing. And we find out that this is by design. They used 9/11 to put the Patriot Act in, which is the biggest usurping of our constitutional due process rights ever conceived, and to start some wars that would put our military far away from our continent. So our military is barely here and is mostly elsewhere. And in the last couple of years, they have secretly moved in a lot of United Nations troops. Their intent is to crash the dollar, crash the stock market, just like they did in 28, 27, 28, okay. And basically there'll be unrest because the money will be worth nothing. And then they'll go, oh my gosh, we have riots. Please, United Nations, come and save us. Miraculously, the next day, the troops are already here, and our military can't help us because they're all over the globe. So this is the big plan. This is the big plan, okay? So what the Republic is faced with now is not the prospect of being able to peacefully coexist with the corporation as we grow over the next 5 to 7 years and people realize they can join us instead of being a corporate slave, and our numbers would grow naturally. What we're faced with now is the military and the international community looking at us and scrutinizing it and saying, are you ready to run the country when the corporation fails, which is soon, so that the military can back us and tell the United Nations to take a flying leap at a rolling donut and get out of our country. We are trying to get the final states together, and we are trying to get all of the official documents in the Court of Records and everything filled in all the republics so that the military will finally say, we will back you 100% because we believe that you are in place and can run the country when the corporation folds. Our Chief Justice, Nathan Peachy, put out a letter dated January the 11th. I can't read the whole thing to you. I read the first and last paragraph. The serious complaint and grave violations of constitutional rights and privileges by the county, state, and federal corporations disclosed as foreign sovereigns committed against the American peoples and parties of the free independent republics, okay, of the United States of America, Constitution, has been prepared for filing from the office of the Republic Attorney General. They're basically going to convene a national grand jury with a juror from all 50 republics very soon. And the case that they're going to be hearing is evidence that the corporation is planning the collapse of the economy to bring in United States troops. It may even involve United Nations troops, and it may even involve the use of mustard gas and phosgene gas. The estimation is that 100 million Americans could die in order for this country to no longer be a threat to the New World Order. And what will precipitate that ground war is the financial crash, and our military is not here to help us. The last paragraph says the security team at this near event will consist of the military, law enforcement officials, and American Rangers who work for us, who will administer surveillance and security during this event. Okay. So in the very near future, I believe that the military is going to not only be providing security for this event, I believe they're going to be testifying to the American people. The military recognizes that we, the people, are back, and that the grand jury system is back. And they are going to testify against the corporation, and the American people are going to put together a true bill. If you leave today thinking that you don't have to pay attention to this, and that life as you know it is going to go on for another year or two, you're living a dream. I'm here to tell you, absolutely, that either this republic is going to get into power, get the military backing, we've already got enough gold, okay, to put this thing back together, and the military is going to back us, and we're going to get the UN plans out of here, or we're going to have ground war on this continent this year. This is where we're at, okay? Now let's talk about the currency a little bit, because I omitted that. Kennedy understood that the U.S. Treasury is supposed to print money, and that if the Treasury printed money, it wouldn't be a debt instrument with a usury fee tacked onto it for every dollar used, which is what the Federal Reserve notes are. So he put Executive Order 111100 together in 1963, authorizing the U.S. Treasury to print notes, to print dollars, not notes, backed by silver, and they were starting to be put into the banks. He printed billions, I think it's 10 billion of 5s and 10s, and I think 5 or 10 billion of $20. This money was begun to be put out into the banks, and they killed him. Why? Who in their right mind would take their paycheck in 1963-64 and get Federal Reserve notes for their paycheck worth nothing, or get Treasury notes backed by silver? For every Treasury note that was used, the usury, the rent, taxes, which is what everything the IRS collects is basically just the usury for the money, would have come to an end. The central bank would have come to an end. The cash flow to the European rich and to the bankers and the crooked politicians would have come to an end. So they whacked him. That money's been sitting there since '63, and not one president has touched it since then. Maybe they're afraid of being whacked, or maybe they've got a large enough financial interest in what's going on that it's just, business as usual. Democrat, Republican, doesn't make any difference. They're all understanding what's going on. Most of the civil servants, not at the top, think they're serving the people. I guarantee you that the people at the top know what's going on, and by being a part of what's going on, it's made them far more money up and above their salaries. How will the transition take place? We are hoping and praying that the corporation realizes that the military is getting ready to switch. They have made contact with our interim president, James Timothy Turner, and have begun negotiations for a peaceful transfer in exchange for amnesty, for forgiveness. Okay? If those negotiations can go well enough, we'll be able to put the Treasury notes out into circulation before the Federal Reserve notes go to zero. We had thought a year ago that the value exchange rate from the Treasury notes from the Federal Reserve notes would be 10 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on the dollar. We now believe that the value of the Federal Reserve notes is so broken that there's not going to be an exchange rate at all. But if we can get the Treasury notes in place so people can begin to have them in their possession, then when the Federal Reserve notes crash, people will still have buying power. If we can't work that out, eventually the United States Federal Reserve notes will be gone. Nobody's checking accounts or credit cards are going to work. Everything that you have in CDs or money market is going to be worth zero, and IRAs the same way. Some stocks might make it, many stocks won't. This is going to be a rough transition. So how do you prepare for it at a personal level? You need to at least, minimally, have 30 days worth of canned food. Canned meats, pastas, grains, rice, fruits, vegetables, everything. You're not going to go to the grocery store perhaps for a month. You need to have water. The reason I recommend canned goods is maybe there'll be problems with the electric. If you can get a knife, you can open a can and you can dine. Okay? If you have assets, you need to take a serious look at what my family has done. We have gotten rid of all of our IRAs, money markets, and CDs, and we have bought pre-1964 silver coin. in the denomination of dimes and quarters so that it can be used for barter, and it's 90% silver. And whenever the new currency is put back out, we'll be able to exchange the silver that we bought with Federal Reserve notes for the new currency. Almost everybody says that when the paper money, Federal Reserve notes disappear, that the value of silver is going to go up, especially if the new currency is going to be backed in Treasury notes by silver and gold, which it is, because that is the intent of the Republic. We won't have to print the initial amount of money. It's in warehouses, and we have found it. So, where we're at today is we need 12 people minimally in each county of Missouri to ratify a county settlement document, which basically maintains that members of the Republic who reside in that county have ratified a document taking the entire land mass of that county away from the D.C. Corporation and giving it back to the people. So I'm 4 hours away from home today creating a video so that you can get at least 12 people together in this county and the counties that you represent to join the Republic, to ratify the county settlement document, and lawfully, constitutionally take the land of the county back from the corporations. This video will be on the webpage, and I hope that you will spread it like peanut butter, because I can't travel the state. We can't. There's 105 counties in this state. 114. We're thrilled to be here, but there's a limit to my voice box. There's a limit to my personal funds to buy gasoline to fund these trips. That's why the basket is out. Feel free. Okay. This video should be up on our webpage, which is MissouriRepublic.org. Okay? And take this video, email it to everybody, and let's try to get 12 people in every county of this state. Anybody you know, anywhere in the state, get them to watch the video, help them get signed up, and let's get every county reclaimed. As the National is working on getting the 5 remaining states, which is going to be the trigger for the military to salute us, this case will go forward in the next short period of time, and if we've got the backing of the military, things can begin to change quite quickly. We're praying for a peaceful transition. We've offered absolute amnesty and forgiveness to all the corporate players, which is bringing them to the table because they are afraid for their lives. We have heard in the last 2 months there have been over 1 million applications for overseas visas from people that live in the District of Columbia. Ever heard of the concept of rats leaving a sinking ship? Okay, so this is where we're at. We need the Republic to be stronger in Missouri. We still have some positions to fill. We need to be praying with all of our might for the additional 5 states to get completely seated so that the federal government can say they really have restored the Republic. We're recognized by other nations, we're recognized by The Hague, but the military's not going to back a horse that doesn't have its act together. The more people we have, the more we can pull together absolute proof that we pass muster and we are ready to run this state and ready to run this country. Time is short. The UN troops are here. The dollar is about as fragile as an egg on the top of the Empire State Building, and plans are made for bad things to happen. The United States is a country, and its people who hang on to their guns and hang on to their dreams of the Constitution are the biggest threat to about 20 nations who want the New World Order. The other 80 nations don't. They want to whittle down the American people so that the New World Order can be brought forth. The Republic can stop it. We need you to sign up today and get a red thumb. This is your God-given ID, not your Social Security card or your birth certificate and none of that wonderful corporate stuff. It's your God-given ID and the name that your mommy and daddy give you. If you use your full name and give us your thumbprint and swear an oath, you can become part of the Republic today, and you can sign a jural covenant, which basically says that you are going to republic with us. Republic is also a verb. Congregate is a verb. People are congregating. A bunch of people are gathered, but we don't know what they're doing. But if we republic together, what we're saying is that we have gathered to lawfully support each other's constitutional rights. I'm inviting you to republic with us. Sign the paperwork, okay? I want to throw it open for any questions that you have now that you need answered before you would sign up. And then once we get those questions answered, we're going to go to another part of the room and start signing people up, and I will continue to answer questions for anybody that has them. Okay? And then once you have joined the Republic, you're probably going to have a different set of questions, which would sound something like, I'm part of the Republic now, I have a red thumb. What do I need to do? The first answer to that question is get this video and share it with everybody yesterday. Okay? Not that it's the best presentation on the planet. Please take it and put together a better one and spread it around like peanut butter. But we've got to get this thing done. We do not have months. We have weeks. Maybe a month. We're getting down to the wire on this stuff. So what questions do you have?